Hello, and welcome back to the sim. We're still here on the ground in Teterboro, waiting for our VIPs to show up. So while we're at it, we might as well jump into the MFD settings now that are available with version 2 of the HJet. Let's go ahead, jump in, and get started. Looking straight away, when we're in a livery that is not a light mode, we of course now have two independent GTCs available to us. However, many of the settings are going to be applied to both sides. Now, when we look at this, you'll see that there's the map, traffic, and weather. If I enable map in this pane, the button below it will change to map settings. If I enable traffic, it will be the traffic settings. If I enable weather, it will be the weather selection or weather settings. If you select Direct to, it's going to jump to your flight plan controls, but it won't change any of the menu screens. Same thing with flight plan and procedures. Charts, which aren't available because Navigraph have not implemented charts yet, and when that new plugin comes along, I'm sure we'll get it made available to us. But that would change this to charts. Aircraft systems is going to change the pane when you control it with the additional submenus. So if we go into system controls, like exterior lights, the interior lights, or the thermostats, make sure to set those to auto so that the ECS cast message goes away. Nothing changes here in the MFD. All of this is taking place down on the panel. However, if I select one of my screens, then of course these are changing what I am addressing with the blue cyan paint, as we've explained in how GTC control works. So controls tend to not affect the screen, but only the GTC. So it's good to keep that in mind. Checklists, same thing. This is going to trigger the checklist, so it'll bring it up. If you click on it a second time, you get into your independent checklists, so you can move about them quicker as well as reset them. And don't forget, you can click to check off. Utilities page will bring up some of the utilities. We saw a couple of these in the last video. And then music, if there was music, speed bugs. So just like utilities, right, where you can make changes, speed bugs jumps in and again does not change the screen, just the GTC and what it controls. We can go to waypoint information and we'll cover that, or we can look to what's nearest based on a category to be able to find that data as well. So when you click on the map, you'll see that map settings comes up below it. Note that in your flight plan, if you clicked on flight plan options, you also can get to that same map settings menu. Now, when you're controlling the map settings, you're going to see that you can choose to sync them. So we can have it off, onside, and all. So right now we have all of them being the same. So anything I change for map settings is going to apply no matter which pane I connect with, I'm connected with. So all the panes will change together. So here, if we were to turn off traffic, traffic is going to be removed from both left and right map menus. If we change the map detail, you'll see that your detail levels are also changing at the same time. So if we change this to, PFD left, MFD left, so initialize sync settings, we want PFD left or MFD left, so it's going to sync them. So here you'll see map sync is off. So anything we do here now is only going to affect what this GTC is controlling. And the same thing goes here. When we lower our detail level, we're not going to have to worry that we're affecting the right-hand side. So that's kind of neat. You also could choose to have north up on the right-hand side while keeping heading up on the left-hand side. Who knows? You get to do what you like. On the right-hand side, you have multiple tabs for additional options related to the map settings. You have traffic, so being able to enable or disable traffic, and it'll tell you what mode it's in. And if you go to settings, you can then set the transponder settings. You'll also get there by clicking on transponder. You'll see you can auto TA altitude reporting, but not all the rest of the information is there. So here's your transponder setting to auto, so it'll automatically go into TA only when we leave the ground. But here you can set your altitude display. Do we want it relative to us? Is the plane 100 feet above us, and so it says plus 100, plus 1000? Or is it going to depict the absolute value? In which case, a plane showing up here on the screen would then tell us that it's a absolute value. So maybe it's at 5,100 and we're at 5,000. So we know it's 100 above us, but it tells us specifically it's at 5,100. So it's whatever you choose to prefer. Your altitude range you can set to above, normal, which are plus or minus 2,900 feet, I believe, or below, right? Unrestricted will go, I think it's 10,000 above, 10,000 below, or 9,900. You've got your ADS-B, so traffic display is ADS-B, yes. Motion vector, so do we want an absolute vector or do we want a relative? So relative to us, where are they going to be? Versus absolute, which just shows where they're going. So relative's great because it does let you know what's going to happen if you continue on the same path based on where they're going to be. Finally, you've got your vector duration. So the blue line it draws in front shows you where they will be in 1 minute. So it lets you know a minute out of their location, and you can adjust accordingly. Hit the map settings, right? Do you want labels? Do you want symbols? So above 25 nautical miles, does it just go to symbols instead of labels? And then labels happen at 25. So there you go. That's the traffic settings. Terrain works in the same way as we covered in the PFD settings. There's relative, there's absolute, right? And there's just terrain off. So if we go with relative, when we go to the settings, we can say that we want the scale. So you can see the absolute scale as to where it is. So above, or if we're at or below 400 feet, it's going to be red, right? And then as it gets below us, it gets darker and darker and darker as we are safer and safer and safer, so to speak. If we go to the absolute, we have the same thing in that we can set whether or not we want the absolute scale, and then you can see the colors are telling you where it is. So sometimes I like to go with this one, so I know low or high mountains, and it's the color scale. You'll notice there's a down arrow because there's a scroll bar, but in this case, the next item that is available to us is radar. And how far out will radar go to? Inset window. So the inset window, you can choose to have the vertical situation display, nothing, so larger map, or you can have the flight plan plain text, and you can choose between cumulative or leg to leg showing up in the columns. Under aviation, you can choose to show airspaces, airports. Here I've got VORs turned off, but I could choose to turn the VORs on and choose to turn them off. With your settings for airports, you can have large airports, 100 nautical miles out, medium airports only when 50 nautical miles out, small airports only within 25 nautical miles. So this lets you set up how much or how far you have to be before they start popping up on the screen for you. You can choose to see VORs. You can have intersections, and so we can see that our intersections are all populating up over here, again, as you zoom in and out type thing. If you prefer to just see it all, let's go with MFD left right now. So if we had VORs, if we had intersections, you got your NDBs, and then even user waypoints. So this is all going to show up inside of those maps. You do have to also enable your detail level for those things to be displayed. If we take out our details, it will override the things that we're trying to make visible. So just keep that in mind. We want airspaces, we want VORs, and then we still can use detail to enable or disable some of these items based on what Garmin has depicted, that it'll automatically declutter those things for you. Coming to the other section, so do we want to switch automatically to north up above 1,000 nautical miles? So if you zoom out the map to 1,000 nautical miles, it'll automatically rotate to show you north up. Next, I like having my track vector, which will show me my line and show me when I'm in a turn, show me when I'm flying, where I'm going to be in 60 seconds. One of my other favorites is the selected altitude range arc. So as you adjust your altitude based on your current climb rate, you'll get a blue banana that shows you where you're going to be on the map when you intercept the altitude that you're climbing or descending to. So that's our map settings. Next we come to traffic, and when the traffic is being displayed, you'll notice now the button changes, and now we can go into traffic settings. So zooming in a little bit closer, because people have asked me to do that, in auto mode, it's going to automatically, when you take off, go into TA only. It'll do altitude reporting, it will do ground, does all that for you, or you can manually place it into a specific mode as required. Altitude display. So again, are the traffic items relative to your altitude? So they're 1,000 above, as opposed to they're at 27,000 feet, or absolute, in which case it will tell you they're at 27,000, you're at 25,000. Altitude range, so unrestricted, so plus or minus basically 9,900 above and below. You could focus only on traffic above because you're climbing and you don't care about below at that time. You could have normal, which is above you by 2,900, below you by 2,900, or you could have just traffic below you because maybe you're about to descend and you only want to focus on the traffic that is below you. I just leave it to unrestricted. ADSB, so is traffic display happening at all? And when I am displaying them, is my motion vector absolute, or is it relative to me and where they're going to be when that 1 minute takes place? So that can be helpful in seeing that you're going to avoid, or you're potentially going to put yourselves into a conflict a few minutes down the line as your arrows and lines start to converge. With our weather, same thing. Now we go into a weather map mode, and if we go to weather selection, we can go ahead and switch the connect settings, which you pretty much can just turn on radar overlays. You can define the coverage, which of course that's grayed out. It's fixed because it's rendered by the sim, and you can change your orientation between heading up, track up, north up, and even just sync it to the nav map. So again, that just lets you be able to pick when you're looking at weather. Maybe the weather map I wanted north up just to see where the weather is. So we go back. If we switch instead to weather radar mode, now we can go into the radar settings. We can turn our radar on. We can go into weather mode so we can see our scale. We can choose a horizontal or a vertical scan, and you can even see the bearing line. So there we've got the bearing line. and now it's going to display the weather inside if there is active precipitation. So you could, on the left-hand side, be in, say, Connects Weather. And then on the right-hand side, because weather is so important in this phase of flight, maybe I've come in and I've gone into Radar, and I've gone ahead and said I need a vertical scan so I can see, am I going to be climbing over it? Am I going to fly above it? Whereas here I can see the overall picture of where there's some pretty heavy precipitation. And of course there's my tilt line, though we can't adjust the tilt. Going to Aircraft Systems, we've seen these before. It's the same synoptics pages, just with the new styling for version 2. This is also still where you come in, Aircraft Systems, System Controls, to control your external lights, which normally stay in the on mode, and just click to drag. This does allow you to click and drag to find all of your lights. Everything should usually be normal, or you can override them. Your interior lights, so this is where you can adjust the cockpit lighting, you can adjust the cabin lighting, and you can adjust the display brightnesses. We've also got our pilot footwells, we've got our seatbelt, and we've got our no smoking. You also got your thermostat. There is 2 tabs. You can control it or you can put it into auto. I've placed it in auto. Sim options is something we're familiar with from version 1. Originally, it used to be that these 2 GTCs were split and you could only get to sim options and do a few things on the right hand side. When you're in a full livery as opposed to a light livery, these are obviously independent, but you can get to it from either side. So I can go into sim options and I can do that wherever I would like to. So come on into the sim options, so I can add fuel, I can add passengers or pilots, and I can add payload. Not to mention we can go into the sim options so that we can make sure that we've got the things open or closed or the modes all showing what we'd like. And remember, this is persisted, so if we were doing a turnaround and we shut down and came back to the plane, however we have these set is the way it's going to be when we load the plane up. Same thing with the load manager. The load manager is going to remember how much fuel you had and where you had people and baggage in the plane after your previous flight. And don't forget, scan the QR code. It will get you to the Discord group. It'll also get you to the manual, the tutorial, gets you all the information via a quick website. So easy way to get the manual. Next up is checklists. We've covered this before. You have it, it brings it up, and if you click on it again, you can move ahead, and anytime it's up, clicking on this knob will advance it. You can also map physical buttons, and you can use on the control wheel the little scroll button in the virtual cockpit. Your utilities page. So here you can come to do your weight and fuel planning. This will be used as part of initialization as well, but the page shows up here. Your minimums. So again, when you load a procedure, you can enter the minimums there, but you could also come in and manually do it from this screen after. The timer we covered in the PFD, how to set the timer running. We've got the GPS status. So cool. We can bring up a synoptics page. This is really neat. Cool thing for Working Title did. You can see where all the GPS is and you know that you're good. You've got your initialization, which takes you to the initialization page. This is where we run the system test, we enter our weight and fuel, and we get our speed bugs, and then once all those are done, we can hit accept initialization. Under setup, this is the only other setup screen, and it's for your avionics setup. So under system, you can set your time format to local 12-hour, or you can set it to UTC. In the future, we hope to be able to click on this flight director and change it to a double Q. Looking forward to when Working Title puts that in. if you don't see 3 digits here and you need to control 0.833 spacing, you're going to find that you were probably not in it. You were in 25. So remember, you come here, you set it to 8.33, and that will be there on the next one. Under nearest airports, you can choose whether it's hard only, hard and soft, water, or any surface that will show up. We want hard only for the HJet. You can also set up your minimum airport runways. If you're comfortable with 3,000 feet, you can go ahead and throw 3,000 in. If you prefer to only see 4,000 foot runways, you can go ahead and enter that data. Next, under units, you can change the nav angle, magnetic or true. You can set your distance and speeds in nautical miles, or you can go kilometers and kilometers an hour. You can change the vertical speed, altitude and vertical speed, to feet per minute, or meters. And then you've got your temperature controls, and you have your fuel and your weight. Note, though, that when you look at a synoptic screen, like the fuel, or you look here in the EIS, changing fuel from pounds to kilograms is not going to change anything in these screens because they don't actually change in the real plane. So this is for inside of the menus only. So that was units, and then we've got the MFD fields. So a lot of people love to know information. You'll see that your MFD fields, ground speed, direct track, you have control to change any of these all you want. So if I want to get off my direct track, I don't really need it and track, I can come in and I can pick from a plethora, like fuel on board. Now I know I've got 2,073 pounds. So that's kind of neat. Or fuel over destination. What is it telling me I'm going to have when I arrive at my destination in the air? So that's the burn it's calculating, so I can see if I feel like I'm going to make it and my fuel planning is coming along nicely. So yep, you can change all your MFD fields. That is available as well. Speed bugs, we've covered this before, but these you can manually adjust if you want to manually enter them, or you can hit the Get from Sim, which will pull in the weight that you're currently at so that it can recalculate what those bugs are going to be. And anytime you hit Get from Sim and it recalculates, it will turn them off, so you need to remember to turn them back on again. Waypoint information, these are really cool screens. So we're flying next up to what do we say? We're going to go to Detroit, so DTW. So if we go to airports, and we'll just actually we'll zoom in on this so you can see this better. But if we go to the airport and we say, okay, we're at KTEB, but we're going to go to KDTW. So now we get the information about the airport, what its current bearing is, where it's at, how the distance is, its elevation. We can look up frequencies, so we can look ahead to the frequencies that we're going to find there. So the tower, the ground, the Unicom, and even the approach frequency. But you can also go to weather. So it's going to pull in the METAR. So that is the live METAR. Sometimes the sim doesn't match, but hey. But I can see its altimeter setting, I can see the full METAR, and I can see the decoded METAR right here as well. So that's pretty cool. Charts, obviously with no charts, it won't show up. When you go to runways, you can see which runways it has. So that's available to you. You can click on a runway and yeah. Then you can go to procedure and you can see the procedures for that airport. So I could click on it, I could get into the procedure, and I could enter and load or load and activate. So it jumps you into the procedure screen pretty quick. So this is pretty helpful, especially if you want to check out weather and see what the live weather is. Using this pulls in that same weather. Really neat. If you're looking for a specific intersection, You could look for Jawin, sure. And we can see that it's 250 nautical miles away. Nearest VOR is ORF, so that's pretty cool. That's near Norfolk. So there you go. So you could also look up a VOR. So we could look up the TEB VOR, since we know that's close by. Duplicates found, so Täby in Sweden, but we want Teterboro. So here we can see the frequency for it, and if you clicked on frequency, we could send it to the active nav2 frequency. So we can quickly send that in. We can see the distance based on the FMS. So this is based on GPS distance, not actually measuring it. So for example, if we looked up the YOW VOR, we know that's 114.6, so that's great. I can throw it to my standby. It's 287 nautical miles away. That's coming from the database, not from actually being able to tune it in. And what's nice is it can tell you that it's a VOR with DME located at it. So we should pick up DME. So it's another nice way to be able to look at a waypoint and see if I should be getting DME from it as well. You can look up an NDB. You can also come into user waypoints, and you could go ahead and add a user waypoint. So that way you can build your own user waypoints that you may need via latitude and longitude and use them in your flight plans. Finally, nearest. Nearest is always good. Throw up the airports and it's going to tell you where the nearest airports are. Hey, there's Newark. We could go ahead, show it on the map. So if we pull out just a little bit, we can now see it on the map where it is. We could hit the airport info. It's going to go ahead and bring up the airport info. We could hit waypoint options. You can show it on map there as well. So now we zoom into it. It's pretty cool. There's a lot you can do with your nearest as well. Very helpful. And so under nearest, airports, intersections, VORs, NDBs, and user waypoints. So you could look them up. Obviously, airspaces, ARTCC and FSF, those are grayed out, not supported. Under weather, you could actually look up the weather, so the ATIS frequencies for all of these airports. And you could click on this, hit show on map. Of course, it jumps out, shows you where it is on the map. Great. And we could hit airport info. So, of course, we could jump there to get the weather. Well, isn't that snappy? Very, very cool stuff here with the MFD. So it sounds like our VIPs have arrived, so we're going to go ahead and get the door open, get them in, and get our flight plan entered. If you made it this far, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and come along on the next one. As always, thanks for watching. Have a great day.